All right. I'll record this one from the start. And it's just about time anyhow. Who knows who else will come on? We'll see what kind of ideas the concept. Wrong piece of paper. The concept is to have a kind of a discussion, so to speak, at least share out some ideas on what your definition of health is. And that was the goal of it. And we also sent you out, just so that you can see there's some variance from day to day, we sent you out a little form to fill out for 7 days. So you could do the normal stuff, body weight, body temperature, pulse rate, all whatever, just a few variables on there just for fun. So you could see that you vary a little bit. I take my blood pressure, usually try to take it once a day, and I weigh myself every morning, check body mass index. So I I don't chart it anymore. I did chart it for a while. I actually took checked my sugar twice a day for 2 years and charted it just for fun, just to notice the variance and to notice how ranges kind of move a little bit. They vary a little bit and they'll move up, they move up, they move up. And anyway, it's nice to be able to see when you start to look at life, it's not a very perfect scenario ever. And there's a lot of things that change all the time. We dance within ranges all the time. And so it's nice to get a kind of a breadth of like, how big is that range? And since the theme in this is wellness, we're looking at wellness and health ranges. And how big is your range with wellness and health? And what is your concept on it now? Because in next month, in number 5, we're going to start to take an approximation towards what would be healthier. Can we start to imagine in a healthier sort of way, what would that look like, rather than have it something that you would do like for New Year's Eve, like what are your goals for the year? Instead, we want to look at what your range projections are. What would look better and how we can start to play with that. So what I'll do is I'll just read a couple of had from people. Some of the people can't make it Tuesday night, so I've done some chats with a few of them. And because I've taught about 100 people so far with this class. So some of the people out there have participated in this at some other time before it was a webinar. And so we've had little gatherings together. And for the most part, one group that I worked with just the other day, they said for the most part, what they've been doing is they've been playing with food criterion. And they did that, that 30 days away from reactionary food, and then slowly putting things like dairy and so on and so forth back in to see what your tolerance is, to see what effect it has on it. And I'm sure all of you out there have tried that once before. So they're really in the process of exploring health ideas. And I've got one here. I'll read the same thing. She's got company tonight, so she won't be on. She said, and she's taken this as a live program a little over a year ago. So I've been thinking about health and how it relates to me. I found once again my perfection tendencies were getting in my head in a not helpful way. Just as I thought when I started PCT, that useless, I was fully conscious all the time. I was not doing something right. I had been looking at health in the same way and feeling I was doing something right unless I felt healthy all the time on all levels. I still forgot I operate on a range and expanding the range wider.
This message is so important to get out there and share. And I know that you have the book finished. I know that the documentary is still in progress, and you have had incredible people show up on that, including Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith, Jack Canfield, Demon Graham, Bobby DePore.
Okay. Who knows where that came from, but that was entertaining. All right. Ads come in wherever ads can get in. Somebody found a link. So anyway, she was just saying that she was entertaining the idea of health, and then she remembered that it was a range, is kind of what she's saying. Uh, After going, this is more current, after going without flour, processed food, and all added sugars for 6 months now, I have discovered a new level of health for myself, or should I say a wider range of health, right? Lately, I've been playing with my food. I eat the same 3 meals a day, and 2 times a week, I add a different food to the meal to see what my reaction to the additional food is. Food, I thought, were an issue before, are not always an issue. And issues, some foods I thought were okay are not so okay. So she's been experimenting a little bit, eating kind of the same genre of food or having a routine down, and then throwing in a couple of different things as a variance to see what reactions occur in her body. And yeah, I think when you vary your diet all the time, I have a tendency not to eat consistently the same things. I don't like to cook. I don't like to cook the same thing, except maybe like 4 times a year. So pretty much every day I'm eating something different. So when I have a reaction, but I only eat 1 meal a day. So it does narrow it down a little bit. When I have a reaction, I can usually spot it pretty quickly because it's only been one occurrence of food. But when we travel, then we usually wind up eating 2 meals a day. So we have a little bit of variance. It's been a struggle to accept the physical manifestation of prior thought patterns. I have become much healthier on many levels over the last 5 years, yet old habits and patterns trigger a physical response that still had to play out. Good news is that when the physical responses flare up, it seems to dissipate or disappear rather quickly. And she closed, learning to eat to live instead of living to eat has been very helpful. Food fuels my body now, and I no longer use it to pleasure my body. I will continue to play with food and find the right combination of food that feel is best for my body. So one person has an idea. It's more exploration, but she's been playing with discovery that works for her, and changing. Actually, she's lost 40 or 50 pounds over this last year, consistently, and very, very different. And trying to get her head around who she is has been a real challenge. Here's another one that says, I don't feel I have a good personal definition on health at this time to even reference. I would say that you, meaning Chris, are very healthy, and her granddaughter, she said she thought was healthy. But I don't have a story that as of yet meets that definition, the state of being free from illness or injury. So she's struggling with conditions and responses is what she's saying. So she's hard for her to, she's exploring it, but she doesn't really have a good definition. She kind of, I don't think she thought in terms of good definition. I thought she thought in terms of what foods had reactions to her body. So that's kind of where she came from, knowing her. Certain things she didn't eat because she had reactions. So she was in avoidance of food. And that number of food that reacting was increasing. So she finally got to a point where there was very little she could eat and not have a reaction for. So at that point, then she started isolating back down to some really strong basics and started realizing what she was in a habit of eating and what she associated by default. A lot of people will get up and think they're going to be eating a better breakfast, and then they throw in all kinds of variables in there. You'll have proteins in orange juice, forgetting that orange juice is something that's really saturated in sugar, so they're dumping a lot of sugar in with the proteins, and that's going to most certainly affect you. Everything affects us. Everything out there affects us. We get affected by everything to some relative degree. We can tolerate some effects, and some effects have a huge impact upon us. And then the tolerance is not something that we can walk away from or be securing in or done very easily, right? It affects us. The closer that we take something, probably what we digest affects us greater than what's in proximity, and most certainly even greater than what's at a distance where you guys are at right now on the web. So all those are variables. The greatest thing, of course, that affects us is what we're going to be consuming. So to be able to start to take a look at that effect is what we're starting to gear into. And to be able to manage that effect, or managing life, life is, do we want to be able to have an experience called life that we can set up for, or do we want to just be in the storm called life, be affected by it all the time? It's not always pleasant when we're in the storm of life and affected by it all the time. So those are choices that we get to participate and play in. My idea of health is that there's a union of energy, mind and body, that is influenced by lifestyle, which includes meditation, movement, occupation, connection, food, belief, and so on. Also, I think environment plays a part in this, like air and quality, water quality, climate, and so on. Resilience is another factor. I do believe that aging is in the mind to a point. I know people who buy houses without stairs because they're getting older, they're downsizing, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, most certainly they're starting to look at their body as becoming something different, and then they have to react to that consideration rather than, I'm looking at getting a house with more stairs because I need the exercise. So I guess, yeah, we most certainly think a little differently. Yeah, I would agree with what her points are. I think all those are variables. It's very interesting. I will eventually bounce some books off of you. I've got one that Cheryl from Southern California has shared with me and sent me, and it's written by a dentist on diet and health, and really interesting, tying a bigger picture, looking at what we eat affects not only your health in general, but also your whole teeth, your palate, and what your mother ate. That generation comes down, affecting the whole dynamics for those who understand methylation and some of the other dynamics that come into effect, like crooked teeth and things. It's hard to imagine that indigenous tribal people out there to this day that are eating all natural foods are actually grow with really straight, strong teeth, healthy arches. And when you start to look at people that eat processed foods, they all wind up with crooked teeth and problems with arches and a lot of decay. And when you get communities like parts of Africa is still people eating natural foods that they have in their environment, and their teeth are still healthy. And then other parts of Africa have been introduced to modern foods, processed foods, and their teeth have really had a lot of cavities and problems and have lost a lot of teeth and have a lot of crooked teeth. And those are examples that kind of pull up. So anyway, we're not looking for really a lot of data. We're really looking for what your experience is. And what was your definition of healthy coming into this? What brought that together? Was it an experience in life or something that was just familiar? Anyway, I'm going to come back and see if we can share that with some people out there. We got a few people that have dropped in, a few people that has disappeared. So manage chats. Let's see what we got on here. Well, we got quite a few on here right now. And I brought that up on screen so you could see. And a couple of them have muted. So I'll go around and let's see who wants to be first. Tell me a story about your idea of what health means for you right now in your life. Okay? Anybody out there? Just unmute your mic and talk to me.
I just want to say hi, Chris. It's Danny. Hi, guys.
How you doing?
I'm good. Good to see you. I think I came on blaring. Sorry, I didn't know it was going to be like open like this, but really happy to see you.
Yes, not a problem. You can always hide.
Like some have. Well, I'm not being very happy. I've just had cake and ice cream, and I'm thinking, oh shit, he's talking about health, and I just had cake and ice cream.
Go to the corner of the screen.
Huh?
Go to the corner of the screen.
He's teasing with you.
Oh.
I will actually send you guys a YouTube video sometime next month, which is really interesting. Some of the latest research. It's kind of long and it's a little boring in the beginning, but it's very informative. Research scientists aren't always the most exciting people to talk, but we're starting to understand more of a scope of things. I had a couple come over last night, Sunday night, yes, 2 nights ago, Sunday night, for dinner, and I cooked. And it's a someone that's in business that has business negotiations with my wife and her business. So anyway, they would get together, and it was kind of a business event. But the guy brought his wife over, and I cooked dinner, and I chatted with her about recipes and stuff. Anyway, when they showed up, I told them, bring something special if you want something special to drink. Otherwise, I got lots of food. Don't worry about it. So she brought over a cake, and she sat it down, and she said, I know you don't eat cakes, and we don't eat cake, but I've been wanting to make this Italian wedding cake forever. And the only reason I could justify making the silly thing was to bring it to your house. And I said, oh, okay, whatever. So we had dinner, and after dinner, we cut little tiny pieces, like 1 inch by 1 inch square, and we all sampled her Italian wedding cake. It was actually great. Yesterday, Monday, I took it over to the neighbors and gave it to them, so they'll partake of the cake. But I most certainly had a piece of cake this week, a little tiny piece, and tried it. It was really quite good. So I don't think that that you're going to kill yourself by exposing yourself to some of that kind of stuff. I think that knowing that I was lactate intolerant is what I'm looking at my story of health. Knowing that I was lactate intolerant because I couldn't handle it when I was a kid. I was always sick. In a baby bottle, they would actually give me, this is before you had formula. Remember, I'm ancient, right? So they would actually take homebrew beer, and they would heat it up and put it in a bottle. And that's what I used when I was a kid. So I was kind of weaned on beer. But anyway, it had nutrition in it, and that's what kept me alive, because I couldn't do milk. But my mother felt like I should have milk. She was a wonderful lady, and she felt like she had an obligation to get milk into me somehow or another. So usually she would mix milk and whiskey and heat it up so that the alcohol would boil out and give me a warm. At least that way I slept. But normally if I just had milk straight, I wouldn't sleep. Now, for years, I ate ice cream. I don't have any idea why I ate ice cream. Not a lot, but I would eat it maybe twice a month. And I ate ice cream. And it wasn't really, it was like not too long after I married Deborah, that was 11 years ago. All of a sudden I realized, what am I eating ice cream for? I'm lactate intolerant. I should not have anything that's really got milk in it. So I was like, wow, doesn't make me sick, but most certainly has a reaction. I would eat ice cream a little tiny bit. I was good to go. But if I sat down and had a whole bowl of ice cream, I would feel it in my stomach, and it would take me about a day to get past it. So I just gave up ice cream, and I haven't had any since then. Even if somebody does a cake, why I usually say, I don't want any ice cream on the side. So I'm pretty good with ice cream, but when somebody makes a cake, like especially when Kathy makes a cake, why then I most certainly will go for a piece of it. So that's not a problem. I might have cake 2, maybe 3 times a year. So not all that often, but every now and then I most certainly will partake. I don't see any issues. Once again, there's not a perfect world that we're trying to gear into, right? So, I think as we start to move a little bit more into Wellness Code, we really don't get into the technique and stuff until about the 7th month. So we've got 2 more things that we'll be looking at. Next month, we'll be looking at how you build the idea of healthy, and then we'll start to look at how things are put together. So, and the ethics involved with it, a little different approach, right? And then we'll start getting into a technique that we can apply to start to change the habits that we have. But anyway, that's what we're working in direction. So any other comments that you wanted to put on the fact that what health means for you, other than the fact that you may have violated your own rule or not, who cares? But anyway, what else does health mean for you?
Well, whatever it's worth, I've spent a long time trying not to be something instead of trying to be healthy.
Right.
So, try, let's not to be overweight. Actually, I just need to get taller. To avoid surgery, which I've managed to do. I just haven't made myself healthy and gone through that path. Right. So it's really been of late a process of making the space to do that by unraveling a little bit, which is, and also by looking at other options that I've always said, forget about, like, Paul McCartney died and was replaced. We never went to the moon, and the earth is flat. I mean, right. I'm not saying any of those things are true. I'm just saying that it was important to me to entertain another option, so I could start to entertain the option that, yeah, I could be healthy, because I can't really remember when I wasn't in pain.
Right. Right. It'll be an interesting mapping to be able to say what that. Okay. It'll be interesting trying to discover what a healthy would be. We'll get talking over the next few months on looking at the decisions we make in life versus looking at the reactions that come up in life. A decision and a reaction is not always the same thing. Some people live by making decisions, and other people live by jumping from a reaction to reaction to reaction. So if you live a lifetime of having a reaction and then do something to compensate for reaction, then that food becomes something that we use to compensate or generate a different reaction. And we never arrive at a place of decision making. So anyway, that's a possibility you might explore as you kind of explore what shows up for you unhealthy. Anyway, Danny, did you have anything you wanted to add to what you had said earlier about your idea of health?
No.
Okay.
But it's interesting what you're saying about reaction versus decision,
Yeah.
And the reason why I had cake is because I'm feeling hungover, because yesterday I had wine, and the older I get, I'm more intolerant to everything, and it pisses me off because I don't want anything to dictate to me on any level.
Yeah.
I'm not stupid,
Right.
and I just it's interesting reaction. So I'm in reaction to the fact that I'm pissed off because I had wine, and I knew that if I had a second glass, which I did, I'd feel crap today. I felt crap all day. And so I had cake as a reward almost. You know what I mean? It's a cycle that a lot of us get on. But at least I own it, right?
Right.
Most people lie about cake and wine. I don't. I own it.
Right. So it's a little association with kind of like a comfort food, right? Or at least a reward process. All right. But that's most certainly a reaction trait for reaction. I'm not saying that's a bad idea at all. Sometimes we just have to do that. Sometimes it's been a really horrible day and we have to take a break, right? Or but if I sit reading for a couple hours, I got to get up and move around, go for a walk or do something, because it feels like my body just turned into a statue, right? When I sit there and don't move for a while, I most certainly get stiff. And so moving is really important. And I've been working and looking at foods that keep a certain level of fluidity in the body and keep weight most certainly managed. So some of my criterions is like what puts weight on my body. Since my scale or marker is most certainly to mark the range is body weight. Every day I weigh myself. So when we ate that piece of cake that night, I had a chicken curry with cauliflower is what I cooked. And a coconut milk. There wasn't really any sugar, a lot of spice, but no sugar. So the only sugar we really had is that little piece of cake, and I gained 2 pounds. I didn't eat 2 pounds of cake, but I will see that if I take in any carbs, I usually gain anywhere from 2 to 3 pounds in a meal. And it takes usually 3 days to see it come off. So if I eat it every day, it never comes off. It just keeps building. But that's me. Everybody is, once again, most certainly can operate differently. I have just been watching my weight and weigh myself every day for the last maybe 10 years. So that's a lot of research. Pretty much it takes a second, but I get on that scale every morning and I go, wow, okay. It tells me a little bit about, since I only eat one meal a day, it tells me a little bit about the effect that meal had, and I've had time to digest it, for heaven's sake. So it's morning, and my scale to do body mass index, you have to be barefoot. So that's kind of the best time is when I step out of the shower. I'm most certainly barefoot. I don't wear my boots in the shower. So it gives me a chance to also do body mass index. So that's when I weigh myself. That's every morning. So I just, I know what that does to my body, but most certainly I have other people out there that have done the same ritual that I'm going through, weighing themselves every day, and they don't get that big of it. They can handle carbohydrates much better than I can. If I stuck with eating carbs for about 3 days, my weight will go up 5-6 pounds, and then it takes close to a month to come off. So it's really, it escalates. Sugar, it's just a carbohydrate. That's all it is. So it's really, I do much better if I can stay away from hydrogenated flour. If I have something that's made somewhere else in the world that doesn't use hydrogenated flour, and eat that, it doesn't seem to have that effect on me. Anyway, exploring what works for you, how you feel, what you do about it. Like I said, pretty much, I think from the time I was a little kid teething, my mother used to always give me ice cream, a little bit of ice cream because it hurt. And so that becomes the comfort food. And so anytime I'd be going through some emotional trauma or some aches and pains or end of day, and it's kind of like clearing your head. I mean, some people sit and watch TV for a couple hours. I usually would sit and read. And so I used to get in the habit of at least once a week, maybe every 2 weeks, eat a little bit of ice cream. And it was a relaxing thing, kind of like what Danny had talked about. And then I had stopped, and it was really kind of interesting because then I started seeing that anxiety doesn't seem to build up in me as much. It's almost as if I changed my relationship with it. So I don't really feel like now I get anxious enough to where I need to calm down. It's okay. But I think I had 2 glasses of wine myself when we had dinner the other night. So that most certainly could have contributed to the 2 pounds too, although it usually doesn't. I don't usually ever drink any more than like a glass or 2 of anything. So, and I don't really see ever a weight gain from wine. Maybe if I drank a whole bottle, it would go up, but I usually don't. So anyway, and then I drink it often enough. I drink wine probably once or twice a week, a glass of wine, but usually pretty rare to have 2 glasses. A lot of times I'll pour a glass of wine and I'll share it with my wife. So we don't consume large amounts, if that makes any sense. And also I used to be able to drink a lot, and all of a sudden in life, somewhere around age 72, I think, all of a sudden it's just like my tolerance for drinking, it kind of started sliding out the door. Now if I have 2 drinks, boy, I can really feel it. It used to be, it'd be about 4 drinks before I could feel it. I can remember when I was young, I could easily nail 6 drinks in a happy hour and go back to work. And now if I had 6 drinks, I'd just be asleep for a couple of days, I think. So I've heard that your tolerance goes out when you get old, something about the brain. But anyway, for me, it most certainly worked that way. My tolerance is most certainly going out. And I can notice it I have a second glass of wine, and I will notice it in just the way I enunciate and speak. It affects me physically very quickly. But the scale don't go up. Yes.
In speaking about all being at the effect of food, etc., it seems to me at some point, and maybe it was in the healing class or something else, we discussed a couple of things about belief that something will put weight on you, and that it will. I remember a story you told me about going on a cruise, and you had a bet with some lady that that you were going to lose weight. You were going to eat your face off, and you were going to lose weight, and you did.
Yes.
But so the question is, at this point in time, I would anticipate that somewhere in this course there would be something with regards to, okay, if you're going to eat something and you know that you can, and you give yourself permission to, and you don't resist it, and you let it move through you, that you're not going to be at the effect of it. So why aren't you talking about that now?
I'm not talking about right now because I'm not sure that we want to sit there and do an energy work to make something occur every day for the rest of your life. So most certainly I can set up a scenario. I can most certainly affect the weather. I can most certainly affect reaction to food. I can most certainly, and probably all these people that are on here right now can do that too, for a period of time by putting my attention on it. What we're really trying to do is we want to try and change the habit that you have. We not want to put more work into your life. We want to change the habit of it. We want it to be an automatic process. So now we're really looking into the unconscious, not the conscious part of what I choose to attend to and manage and control, but the unconscious part that simply runs right there, because probably 94% of you is unconscious. So I don't know if I'd want to have to go through I do know people that, go through this massive ritual every time they eat and pray over it and swing their pendulum and dance around and blow smoke in their ear and whatever else they do. And it's like, what the hell with that? I don't want to do that. I want to dress up and go out to dinner and have a nice time. I want to be able to cook at home and have fun with it. I don't want to have to make it a whole ritual piece. I don't want to have to make it the center focus of my life. And I want to do a lot of energy work. I'd rather save all that for bigger goals. I just don't have time for that in the matrix. So to answer your question, yeah, I think we're not looking at what you could possibly do. Kind of amazing what we could possibly do, but we're not trying to test the perimeter. What we're trying to do is being able to see what habits we have. What is habitually your definition of what healthy is? And that was kind of what the assignment was. What's your definition of healthy is?
So you're looking at it from the point of view of setup then.
Pardon?
Is that so? Would you say that you were looking at it from a point of view of setup?
Yes, it's going to be so much more setting up into the unconscious. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's what we're going to be heading for. But I want to know, number one, I want to know what's in your unconscious now. What is your story of health? Pretty much like, what did you get from your family, right? What is your consideration? What's your go-to when you want a snack, right? My go-to when I want a snack is nothing. But every now and then my wife will put things out because she's more of a snacker than I am. Just the nature of it doesn't mean anything, right? And so if she puts a snack out, we'll eat on some of them I don't. The snack might be grapes, or might be peanuts, right? Anyway, that's just the nature of what it might be. Snap peas to munch on or cut up apples. Anyway, but other people sit there and eat tons of popcorn and eat all kinds of candy and sweets, and just amazing how much a person can consume. So for some people, it's really very healthy, right? Other people not. We're seeing more and more research come out about moms that have a habit of and how it affects their children. We see it show up over and over and over again, right? So we're having kids born diabetic. It's just absolutely amazing, and lots of young kids becoming diabetic. We were all fed candy because mom wanted to shut us up, and it was a little treat thing. If we did whatever, would give us a piece of candy. But, that was kind of an accepted thing for a long time. But now the level of consumption is absolutely amazing because there's so much sugar in everything. So diabetes is coming on younger and younger. If you go on web and you look at people around the world, because now they're buying food from America, these kids in foreign countries are just becoming little chubbies. By the time they're first and second grade, they're weighing 80, 90, 100 pounds, and they're just like a butterball. It's just amazing. And that's because they're eating tons and tons of processed food from America that's becoming popular, and soda pop's becoming popular. And they didn't do that before. So we're changing the world. If they could get back to their system of health it would probably be beneficial for them, but we're most certainly influencing them. And that's the product of TV. So television is becoming a mainstream out there. It's a value piece for an awful lot of the world, right? So we have someone else in there. We got 7 or 8 people on. Anyone else have a comment? What's your concept of health out there? Speak up. Unmute your mic. Penny, what's health for you?
Well, that's a good question because it's changing so much. I'm not really sure I have a story about it for them. I was raised with all these rules about the vegetables you should eat and what made a balanced meal and eating 3 meals a day and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm finding more and more that now, when it comes to food anyway, I eat when I'm hungry, not when it's a meal time. And I look more at what does my body want instead of what should I have. And basically, my diet is healthier, I think, and I feel better. I've lost weight, not trying to, but I've lost weight. And so I don't know. It's very strange that all the things that medical people teach, which, I worked as a nurse for God knows how many years, so that was all very in my mind. But I've been around on the planet long enough to know that all those medical facts change over time, and what is really good for you becomes something that's not, and vice versa. So I think it's more important to just go with how does your body feel when you eat something, and does it support you feeling good and feeling healthy, as opposed to what you should eat and how often you should eat and when you should eat.
Okay. So Penny's telling us something, and let me expand on that a little bit, if I can, Penny. When we start to talk about what's familiar, Danny was telling us that comfort food for her was like, most certainly there's a value piece from her life experience, and her body will validate it, and she'll have some ice cream. The interesting thing about intuition is based on familiar. And when you start to change it, you can change it. It's most certainly educational. You can train it any way you want to, but it's always on, it's always running. So you have to go into your unconscious and start to bring some things up. So Penny's saying that maybe all her life, she may have eaten things that were on a list somewhere as the right things to eat, or maybe she would eat because it was mealtime and she wasn't really hungry. And she's starting to re-educate her intuition and be able to say, well, I eat this, it's supposed to be healthy, and yet I don't feel that good. So maybe I'm just going to start to listen to. So you're not listening to your old body, you're listening to your new body. You really defined it new. You've changed the marker, because the marker would have been, it's time for lunch, it's time for breakfast, it's time for dinner. Those would have been the marker, right? For what it meant in life as far as meal times. And it's interesting to me that how people, I just came back from a trip with people for 17 days, and it was interesting how they would gauge up for meals. And I would sit there and they would have a conversation. It's like, is it lunchtime yet? It's like, I'm thinking, yeah, we haven't done anything all day today. We got up and we had breakfast this morning, and I had a little something from the buffet and a cup of coffee, and now they're worried about lunchtime. It's like, I certainly don't want any lunch. I'm burning calories. I haven't done anything. So my body's relationship to that is like, but I gave up on, at first I gave up on lunch, and then eventually I gave up on breakfast. And I did that somewhere back in high school. So I've been away from that all the way through college. I never ate breakfast or lunch unless it'd be an event. Somebody invited me, doing something right. Just very nature of it, because I realized that I wasn't hungry. But when I was 9 or 10 years old, I could have swore I was hungry. I had no idea. By the time I was 20, I think somewhere around 20, I started losing that idea of I'm hungry. So I don't think I really get hungry. I can easily go 40 or 50 days on a cleanse or a diet, and I don't really come off of it because I'm hungry. I come off it because I'm bored with it. It becomes amazingly boring. Just like food is a bit of an adventure, and it's kind of fun. And I think coming off of a diet, I started noticing that food tastes totally different than when you eat it all the time. And I'm always amazed when I've come off of a cleanse how moldy potatoes taste. Fried potatoes anywhere taste extremely moldy. So that's part of why I've given up potatoes. But, every now and then I'll eat some French fries, but most certainly they have a moldy taste afterwards. I know that other people eat them all the time or dip them in ketchup, which is just sugar. And extremely acidic product, like nasty on your teeth even. But they do that, and I think that probably disguises what little bit of mold taste might be hidden in there. Pretty soon they get used to it, right? I've come off of cleanses with other people there, and we've all sitting there tasting foods, and we're going, oh my God, these are moldy tasting. But a couple of weeks and you get back to where you don't notice it near as much. And so it's like, since I don't eat potatoes, every now and then I'll eat one and I'll go, wow, yeah, they do have an aftertaste to them. Anyway, so it changes. So Penny's most certainly been going through and still is a lot of change. And I think that her relationship with defining her as her body, like what part of me meets the definition of who I am in the world today, that's what she's exploring, I think, and that starts to show up as a relationship and what she eats. It's very, very different. I think you look at your life, all of you out there, you're going to see the same thing. It's been a very defining process. Michael even alluded to it a little bit, being pain during the course of life. You eat food, but I do know that he eats much healthier than what he did when I first met him.
And I can say that things that our society says is pretty standard taste pretty bad. Like roasted nuts taste rancid. The oils taste rancid to me now.
Yeah.
You can't eat anything like that. I'm still looking for a pizza that tastes good. Well, I don't eat much in the way of bread or wheat either, but it just doesn't taste good to me anymore. Sometimes it doesn't take much for me to feel totally full. And then what I found is interesting is not eating in the morning until I'm really good and hungry.
Yeah.
And I haven't gotten any taller, but I'm working.
But you're getting hungry sooner, huh?
Well, no, later, actually. Yeah.
Oh, later. Okay. All right. Well, that's kind of the gender. And I found that at some point, all of a sudden, I just hunger never became a process. So yeah, I usually I don't get too much. I can't really say the last time someone said, "Are you hungry?" I'm going, I really don't know what that means. I'm not sure what hunger means. But I've read a lot of definitions, and pretty much for people who starve, tribal people, people have done research. What does hunger feel like? There's several books out there. Very boring. You don't want to read them. But for the most part, people who have gone through stages of being hungry will tell you that hunger feels like a pain in the head, not a pain in the stomach. I think a pain in the stomach is task-driven and not really hunger. I think when a glucose level gets down to a certain point and your head starts to hurt, then I think that you're really running into a place. So people that are starving to death, they really talk about the pains that they get and not so much the stomach going off. And then you get past a certain threshold, really kind of hard to say. You can read Viktor Frankl's man in his quest for meaning, and he spent 3 years in a Nazi concentration camp. So I think that he has some interesting ideas on what hunger is, because it wasn't very long in there and you never really got hungry ever again. They gave you 2 bowls of soup a day with no substance in it. And every now and then you would get a piece of bread, and it would be moldy or not, but usually moldy. And that was your food for the day. So the soup was all just liquid and maybe made from root vegetables, boiled, but usually nothing in it but liquid. And then 1 piece of bread. So that was the daily ration of food for an adult. So they didn't sit around saying, oh my God, I'm starving. That was not their issue. There was a lot of other issues that showed up. Anyway, that's a hard read, but it's a good book.
Hydration's big too.
Pardon?
Hydration is also big when it talks about being hungry. Sometimes I find that I'm not hungry, I'm thirsty.
Right.
So whatever it's worth.
Right.
I feel better.
Yeah, and I agree with Michael. I have a tendency to drink. I don't usually drink cold drinks. I was outside sweating quite a bit today, so I've got a glass of ice water here next to me. But most of the time during the summer, I drink hot drinks, either hot tea or coffee. And pretty much the world out there drinks hot drinks. Finding a cold drink is really hard. And even if you go to countries like China and you order yourself a soda of some sort, they'll serve it warm. Putting in ice is not something they consider. So usually I would have come in the house. I was outside in the heat drinking hot coffee. When I came in the house and settled down, I made some ice water. And I did that so I wouldn't be hacking and coughing, because I was trying to clear my throat. Cold ice water. Anyway, whatever. So hopefully it reduced some inflammation. I was out there working in the dust and the debris and in the heat. And I think we've had, not only do we have more heat on the planet than we have before, right? Although the planet, yes, Donald, it has been this hot on this planet before, and we have had global warming before, but just people weren't here during the time. So we really have no idea how it's going to exactly affect people. And we'll find out. But most certainly the population of bacteria is going to go up tremendously, because cold weather is what wipes out bacteria. So viruses and bacteria will become into far more of a count. So for a planet that's already struggling with sickness, the global warming is going to probably move us in the direction of dealing with a lot more bacteria and a lot more viruses. At least that's the gist of it, right? So we'll see how that plays out. Beetle population also is going to increase. It's the largest category on the planet. There's over 80,000 beetles they haven't even named yet. So there are beetles that are wiping out pine trees. So we're going to have all kinds of changes on the planet from the global warming. It will be interesting to see. Hey, it's just an experience, right? But you got to remember, no matter what you experience out there, reactions occur in here, right? That's just what happens. And so the way you frame them or define yourself, I'm a person that's reacting. If that's a normal for you, you define it a certain way. That starts to set the habits for you and in your life. So I don't think in terms of getting thirsty very often. But every now and then at night, maybe once every 2 months, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and be thirsty. I have no idea. I'll get up and go get a glass of water. Other than that, I don't usually think in terms of getting a glass of water, I usually think in terms, I don't usually have coffee in the morning. I usually have tea, hot tea. Usually in the evening, I'll have coffee. I usually will have coffee while I read, and I'll have maybe a cup of coffee just before I go to bed. caffeine doesn't keep me from sleeping, so I go to sleep fine. So if caffeine bothers you, you shouldn't do that. But there's a lot of caffeine in tea too. So just a black tea. And I drink a lot of herbal teas. So anyway, anyone else out there? Did anyone else that have a comment? Thank you, Penny, by the way. It was great. And Penny looks great. She was always a very attractive lady, and so now she's just getting brighter and more ornery, and so that's good. Anyone else out there on? We got about.
I'll say something.
Yes.
I, as we were talking, I just sort of condensed my half page or more of what I said, and I didn't really talk so much about nutrition, but to me, health is awareness, both internal and external, because I see in practice a lot of people that are totally aware of what's going on outside them, but not aware of what's going on inside their body.
Right.
So in that awareness, you have to have the ability to flex as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then another aspect of health is love. It seems that the more love you have in your life and the more that love is reciprocal, the better off your health can be. When it's not reciprocal, then it's unhealthy, codependent, but so.
All right. So love's a tough term because most everybody on the planet has a different definition. So it's not a word that has a universal collection thing, which is probably why I talk about securing a we. So being able to find some way to relate to another person or an empathetic piece.
Okay.
For an awful lot of people, love is just simply a reaction that they're looking for. So they have a puppy and they love it, right? So it's a reaction. It's a fuzzy little thing.
And then it sounds like, though, what you're talking about is it's not reciprocal in that point. So if there's a conscious, I guess I don't know how to quantify it, but they've shown like women live longer because they have more close, tight-knit relationships, and men tend to isolate themselves, and that also affects diet as well.
Mm-hmm. So usually they'll classify women as being more integral. They'll look at more pieces into it, and men be more differentiating. And so yes, and so it's a little more challenging for men to step up and be more empathetic. In other words, to be able to play with empathy, which is a We Connect as a game of playing with empathy. I think when I start to look at, how shall you say, with everybody out there, I think you'd have to really scan out what a loving relationship is and what the reciprocal of it is, because I think we've all seen, I think we've all been madly in love and see that all go south too. Mm-hmm. So how much of that is, how much of falling in love is a reaction, and how much of staying there is a series of reactions or expectations. And I understand what you're saying, because I know you've gone a lot deeper, but I'm just saying that some of the people may not understand the depth of that. Right. And because this gentleman and his voice in the background is a professional, and so he's in a business to work with people in healing. So you probably have more internalized references and empathetic references of where that feels. I agree 100%. If you feel totally isolated, most certainly. There's a story that comes to mind, and there was a teacher in England way back 100 years ago. And at the time, he was an English teacher, and he was the most hated teacher in the school, like Cambridge. Everybody, no matter what their major, they were going to have to take some English writing classes, pretty much, no matter what. So they would come across this guy, and they all just hated him. He gave more homework. He was really tough. You didn't want to be late on your homework. He would flunk you. Nobody really liked him. The staff didn't like him. He was just really a grouch of all grouches. and always had a frown on his face. And here, later in life, he was dying in a room that he just rented that he stayed in. And the only person there was the landlady who was waiting for him to die so she could clean the room out and rent it to someone else, right? And that was kind of the gist of it. And there he was laying, dying, and never was a happy man, never had any friends, nobody showed up. And his last words to the landlady, he said, "Tell everyone it was grand." So he thought he had a wonderful life. And when they got into his notes and his journals, it was all delightful. It was never judgmental. It was always, he talked about how inspired he was by the students. Nobody saw a clue of that. They had no empathetic piece. So most certainly he did it as a differentiation. He noted it. These are amazing students. This year's wave of students is just so much smarter than last year's, but he never shared that with the students. He never came across with any of that. He lived it in his internal. 80-some years old he was there dying, and everybody thought he was an old grouch, and here he loved everybody. Mm-hmm. Interesting. So it sometimes presents itself in a different sort of way than traditional. It's kind of hard. I think you have to find your way into that role and not just play that role. Mm-hmm. Right.
Right.
So, most certainly. Yeah. But it is a state. Yes, we all, from Louisa Hayes all the way forward with anger and liver and blah, 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 and whatever those stories are that people have. Anger is a very frustrating piece, but and the effect of it stays in your body most certainly quite a long time. But a compliment can just as easily hook you and manipulate you, right? And so, look at all the people that think that their elected officials are going to change the world, right? And what we're seeing right now in the world is that we really got a sampling of elected officials everywhere, not just in America, but in other countries. Turkey's got some challenges with their Gestapo leader over there, whatever he is. And it's like, wow, all these things are coming to bloom. It seems like an awful lot of Desert Storm wiped out some of the old leaderships that were very severe and military-like and were harsh on people. But most certainly we've got a whole bunch more that have come forth that people were hopeful in and are not really turning out to be all that great. So the world's in a growth. It's most certainly in a quagmire. And when we have a lot of stress in the world, that starts to affect that health piece. And so being able to move forward and play with the idea of what's affecting me? I could be eating the same food that was healthy a few years ago and eating it now in a high stress world, and it wouldn't be healthy. And that's really interesting to see. Is our stress much greater? Yeah. But without a doubt, when processed food came in, health went south in America. And the statistics are out there, and you can most certainly examine all that. So,
can I ask a question, please?
Sure, go ahead.
Talking about everything in our environment, things that affect us. So if we look at the planet, just for 2 seconds, so looking at the planet, and the planet is sick in certain areas. But in my mind, I know that there's an obsession with global warming, and I don't want to discount that. But right. In my own inner world, this planet we're on is so powerful that, we're like a flea on her. She's the dog on my flea, and if she wants to get rid of us, she can get rid of us like that.
Right.
And I'm wondering if there's an overreaction in some people's minds to and drama about, kind of what's happening on the planet that we live on. So, bearing in mind, it's a reflection of health, right? Everything around us is a reflection of our inner world. I just wanted to know what your thought was.
I don't think the issue we have with global warming is what's the cycle of the Earth. I think the fact is that knowing it's a cycle of the Earth and then not working with it, but working counter to it. In other words, we're making it worse than it would normally be. So if you got a little kid, you know they're going to be fidgety, they're going to be noisy, they're going to be all the above. If you sit down and tell them to be quiet and think they're going to be quiet, you're really counter to what's going to be. You might as well set up so that they've got a space to run and be crazy and be wild and be a kid and have fun and play rather than try to manage a situation. We've coming into a condition, which is global warming, and some of the people on the planet said, what can we do to make it more livable to get through this? So it's not the earth and its cycle that's the problem. It's the pollution that we put into the earth to make the cycle more intense, right? It's the same thing that I think Brian was leading to. It's like, if you don't have a loving relationship and you're angry and upset, and you're always got an attitude, then nobody particularly likes you. So you're making a situation in life worse by what you're putting into it, right? So we should be able, looking at the cycle in the earth and said, okay, it's warming up. Let's just see if we can't support this in some way, shape, or form. How can we survive in this and benefit from this and not make it worse? We're not necessarily doing that, right? We're actually still got the highest level of carbon dioxide on the planet that's been here for, I don't know, like 12,000 years. And we could do something about all those things, and we're choosing right now, at least majority are choosing right now to ignore that. And so whatever it is, they're either pretending that it doesn't exist, like our president, or they'll come down through it and think it's too expensive to fix. But the consequences we're going to have to deal with too. That's not usually cheap, right? Kind of like when your brakes start to go out in your car. It's expensive to get a brake job, but if you wait and you're putting new rotors and everything else in, it's even more expensive. And if you get in an accident and get killed, then, what have you done with the price, right? So all of those things are a counter that we can come into, right? If this makes any sense. So it was a really good point. Yeah, I don't think the issue is the earth. I think it's the issue is our relationship with it. As a matter of fact, everything in life is a relationship. That's the point that Brian was making. And if you had a loving relationship with the earth, you would most certainly say, how do we support you in this global warming so that we can have our air conditioner not break down and not pollute the environment and be able to find some way to have this all get along. We're using a huge amount of trash, huge amount of garbage. Consumption of power is amazing, and that all heats the planet up, right? All those things we should have been conserving on and looking at and rethinking. Now, what's interesting is because the meme changes, which means the evolutionary mandate is coming down, and it's making it all different. And as it does that and starts to make changes, we're finding that we're at a threshold. So are we going to step up? Are we going to attend to some of the things? Most certainly. And the reason we're going to do that is going to bring it to a threshold where we have to. If we did it right now, we could avoid that threshold. So it's like, if you always wait to the last minute to pay your bills, you run a greater risk of being late on payments and getting yourself nailed with a late penalty and so on and so forth, right? So we have options right now to set things up in a different sort of way. I think Michael had talked about setup. I'm advocating that we, in our own world, not the world out there, that's too big a webinar, but in our own world, when we're starting to look at wellness, that's your relationship to everything on the planet, right? And what can you do in your unconscious to make changes in your state of wellness? And that's what we're headed towards. So one of the steps for doing that is you've got to examine what you believe to be your health in the world today, right? Yes, we're being affected by global warming. We're being affected by all that. We're being affected by lots of different things. Indigenous tribal people, we find, if research is correct, traditionally spent everywhere in the world, shows that traditionally a few hundred years ago, they would spend about 10 hours a week housing and feeding their family. So they had lots of time to carve out a canoe or go for long walks or just sit and fish. And today, why one person working full time, it's really hard to keep a house and a family fed, right? So the amount of hours and the amount of labor, we've really pushed that to a threshold. We really need to rethink all that. I understand their world wasn't nearly as complex, not as many variables, most certainly. But nonetheless, we're humans. And as we move in a direction of more and more variables outside, more structure outside, we start to build more of a chance to define what's going on inside of us. When there was no structure outside, inside was too vague, no perimeter. And as we build more and more structure outside, then we can start to examine what's inside of it, right? Same in your world. It's like if you just live somewhere, you're a victim of whatever the weather does, rain, snow, you're in a tent, that's all the protection you have. You have no tent, you're just in a sleeping bag on the ground, and you're gonna have to deal with every weather condition coming down. But if you build a house, then you can start to decorate the inside of the house. You can start to make it comfortable for you. You can start to prepare things. You can buy things ahead of time. You can have freezers. So we can internalize a lot more once we've built some structure. We have been building structure, and now we're moving into a place where we're going to start to internalize. It's just starting. It'll mature over the next 400 years, but it's just starting. And so I think of all the things that we need to build in here as a starting block, I would say that probably wellness would be one of the most paramount things. Because if we start to build a sense of value, I think it has to be anchored to a wellness. I think if we're looking for a new moral code, not a set of rules with polarity, but a new moral code, that means what has meaning for me. I think we have to start that I'm healthy and I'm well. That's where I think we have to start. And that's why I've tailored the classes to that direction. So this is kind of a big view, and not so much, what's your health, what's your rules of health. But anyway, I get segued. Anyone else out there with a comment?
Yeah, I'd like to rant and rave for a few minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see if there's anyone else before you rant and rave, okay? Anyone else out there? So it does say in the notes, it's like, please be lenient on time with someone else to talk. Michael and I can talk forever, by the way.
Longer.
Yeah, much longer, probably longer than forever, We both have CDs out there, so when we die, you can just play our CDs forever. Classes that we've done and so on and so forth. It's like, wow. Okay, anyone else on I get the little chat thing that shows up, but I really don't know how to work that. So, and that screensaver, I don't want to do that either. Here's participants. We've got 6 left on there now.
Yeah, we're the tough ones.
Yeah, I know.
We persisted.
And okay. All right. So, Michael, talk to me. What do you got going?
Yeah, I changed my mind.
Oh, okay. All right. So
Okay.
that's all right. Let me do
about global warming. From the research I've been doing, and who knows how valid it is,